Bus is an object to attack. They're hijacked and used as barricades. They're stoned, fired and blown up. Hundreds have been wrecked and 17 busmen throughout the province have lost their lives. But somehow they carry on.
You name it, the busman in Belfast has done it.
What's ever happened to you when you've been driving your bus?
I've had windows broke, the bus sat in fire going to Laganeel one day.
What happened?
And, a lot of lads got on and, of course, putting incendiary in the seats upstairs. And I was driving on up the Laganeel, never thinking that there was anything wrong till a lad in a car flew by me and waved me down. He says the whole bloody top of your bus was on fire. You see?
The top of your bus was on fire? Did you never get scared, Hughie?
Aye, certainly. I've seen me going out with a nice crisp shirt and dry collar and finishing up after an hour with it like a sweat rag.
A public servant gives more than service in Ulster. He can give his life as well. Like the busmen, members of the fire brigade are innocents caught up in the war. Like elsewhere in Britain, they're paid to put out fires, but in Ulster, many of these are caused by acts of terrorism. And as if the job wasn't dangerous enough, Belfast firemen are shot at for actually trying to put the fires out.
We can be met with stones or bottles, and of course sometimes both. But as well as that, if they do give us the opportunity to deal with the fire, that is probably after some negotiation.
You have to sort of get permission off them, do you?
Yes, indeed, yes. We have got to talk to them, negotiate, and assure them that we're not going to do anything against their wishes.
We were sent into the markets area to an electric cable which was on fire. It was shorting up onto the street. This was caused, incidentally, by a limbit mine. We were only there about 20 minutes when we were taken at gunpoint and held in the machines. And for almost an hour, the 4 men in the crew had to sit with an automatic submachine gun through one window and an automatic rifle in through the other. And it was an hour in which none of us knew would ever get out.
It's not only in the streets. The front line in this war is your own doorstep, or the garden of a suburban home. Everywhere, people lead an abnormal life.
Hello?
Oh, hello, Mrs. Smith. It's Bernard Falk here of Nationwide. Is your husband there, please?
Yes. How often have you spoken to him recently?
I've spoken to your husband 3 times, twice on the telephone to his office and once at his home.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Good morning.
You ask everybody questions like
Yes,
that,
I
do you?
do.
Gordon Smith is a businessman. He runs a string of record shops. Yet he's a target of the IRA, named by them in death threats. That's why he sits behind drawn curtains and bulletproof glass, and his home in suburbia is a kind of fortress. From time to time, the IRA picks on one section of the community. And at the end of last year, the Ulster business community came under attack and several men were murdered, which is why Gordon searches his car for a bomb and why his garden is floodlit at night. Of course, their property has been under attack for years. Gordon Smith's record shops have been bombed 52 times. The damage has cost £4 million, and the routine of an ordinary man now revolves around the precautions he must take simply to protect his life.
The important thing is not to tell people where you're going. This includes your secretary, because the telephone message could be overheard, or indeed she could carelessly drop a careless word to someone. Or if you telephone a restaurant and book a table in your own name, you're clearly indicating to somebody whom you don't know that you're going to arrive somewhere at a specified time.
The saddest fact about life in Ulster is that people accept this kind of living as normal. Gordon Smith's wife tolerates her fear at home.
Is there a tension when the doorbell rings? Is there a moment?
Just for a moment, yes. Just for a moment I sort of stop and think. But then, once I find out who it is, I'm all right.
And what would happen? Or what would you have to do if something was wrong?
Oh, I've got a siren which is...
A siren?
A siren, yes, which is situated very near the internal telephone. And if I'm not happy, I will just pull that siren and the police would be here within minutes.
The story is so tragic. The Ulster people are naturally hospitable and friendly. And few would realise by watching the news bulletins that they live in one of the most beautiful parts of Europe, a view which is promoted by the Northern Ireland Tourist Board. How can a race with such tenacity, such audacity, fail to solve its problems, promoting Ulster as a tourist attraction, as a land of peace and beauty? The snag is, a certain sales resistance has cropped up around the world, which is somehow putting people off coming to Northern Ireland in their droves. Now, it's no good telling potential tourists that Ulster has got some of the finest fishing in Europe, a magnificent coastline, miles of unspoiled beaches, and some magnificent scenery. Somehow, potential tourists don't believe it. But nothing daunts the Northern Ireland Tourist Board. It's pressed on regardless from this office in Belfast city centre. The strict security is because 68 bombs have gone off in the area, and you can't be too careful, can you? But have some sympathy for Bob Hall, looking out over the bomb-ravaged capital of a country he's trying to project as a tourist attraction. Bob, who's an ex-British Army officer, likes a challenge in life. And as head of the Northern Ireland Tourist Board, you could say he's found one. Look, I mean, I'm not overwhelmingly convinced. I mean, I like Ulster, but not as a tourist place. I mean, I don't think I'd like to come here myself for my holidays. Now, you try and sell it to me. I'm a potential tourist. What has it really got to offer?
It's got, without doubt, the best coarse fishing in Western Europe, if not in the world. That is a fact. That's not just tourist board fiction. It's got probably the best roads, the most scenic roads in Europe. So if you like motoring or caravanning,
better than the south of France or Switzerland?
Oh, far better, and no other cars or vehicles about to sort of get you all congested and get you all flurried. It's got probably the best steak and the best salmon anywhere in Europe. And finally...
Better than Scotland?
Oh, yes. Well, they eat our salmon over there. We export it. Finally, we've got the most precious thing any country could have probably in Western Europe. We're not overrun by tourists. This is something really marvellous if you really like to travel and you don't want to get pushed around by all different coloured people. This is a treasure, and...
So if you're a tourist, you're on your own, you mean?
More or less, and we're going to have to put a premium on people coming to Northern Ireland fairly soon because we want to preserve this rather unique attraction.
Mr. Hall, good luck to you.
You have to hand it to this extraordinary people that in spite of all they've gone through, they're not giving up. Belfast may look like London after the Blitz, but new buildings are going up all the time. The only trouble is that the more prestigious your project, the more likely it is to become a target for the terrorists. Standing in the middle of Belfast is the Europa, the most bombed hotel in the world. They say to mix a drink in the Europa, you put the ingredients into a shaker, stand still, and the hotel goes up and down. But, like a well-defined martini, the Europa remains shaken, but barely stirred. It is customary for four-star luxury hotels to pamper an arriving guest.
You do this to everybody, do you?
Yes, sir.
But some might find that a Europa welcome can be somewhat degrading. The foyer has the familiar appearance of any major hotel in a city at war. TV crews prepare to film stories on the conflict outside. One can spot some familiar faces passing to and fro, or admire others merely parading to be spotted. But the hotel is really an exclusive club for journalists.
Quote, exasperated and at the end of its patience, stop, unquote, paragraph.
Alors, Monsieur Chauvel, bonjour.
Toujours à Belfast, il n'y a pas grand-chose à faire.
Because the hotel has been a terrorist target, one can sometimes find the news on one's own doorstep. There have been 5 bomb attacks on the Europa. Head porter Tommy Dunn remembers one of them in particular.
They came in with the guns and were holding us at bay here, and one of the receptionists came in through the back door, and she realised right away what was going on, but they hadn't seen her, and she nipped out in her hunkers round to the switchboard, and they thought she was going daft. She was down on her hands and knees. There's a men out there with guns, phone the police quick, and they were laughing at her. They didn't realise there really was a hold-up going on at the time.
The staff of the Europa now accept bombings and shootings as part of their daily lives. They reflect the courage of so many ordinary men and women in Ulster who found themselves caught up in a guerrilla war and regard coping with terrorism as a normal part of their work.
We can't leave until we get everyone out. And then if it really would be a real emergency, we'd have to tannoy everybody. We have a tannoy that goes into the public rooms and a tannoy that goes into the corridors and the bedrooms.
That's why you're in a sort of air raid shelter, aren't you? Which is
Oh, yes. They reinforced one of our walls here to make it feel like an air raid shelter.
Now, you've been sitting here, haven't you, and there was a bomb placed on that counter?
Yes.
And you had to sit there looking at it,
Well, quite honestly, I wasn't aware of it at the time. We were so busy trying to warn our guests about it that I didn't realise the bomb was quite so near.